The Roman Catholic Church wants to manage the AI revolution. They want to awaken the world to a new reality. By 2030, it is a reset. Almost all denominations are involved in this. It's prophesied by 2027 or in 2027 that the last pope will be Peter the Roman. It is interesting. We have 3 Peters as possibly being the next pope. Is this the end of the world as we know it?
Okay, Craig, I know that you have uncovered wild stuff regarding the Pope, who's going to be the future Pope. I've uncovered some stuff too that's very interesting. People are talking about J.D. Vance's meeting with the Pope, but I saw that he also met with the possible future Pope. But anyway, okay, tell me what you have uncovered.
So since the 1960s, the Vatican has been pushing for global governance, and their leading candidate, or who is believed to be the leading candidate by many, is Pietro Parolin of the Holy See.
And yeah, there's very interesting things about him. Can you explain more about him?
In the days ahead, we're going to have an election for a new pope. Usually that is within 15 to 20 days. Then there's this conclave they have in the Sistine Chapel, and they'll elect a new pope. The pope's funeral comes first. And so at this funeral, we need to watch who attends. This will be huge. And so the Roman Catholic Church has about 1.3 billion members worldwide. And in 2005, Pope John Paul II's funeral, there was an estimated 4 million people that went to Rome and the Vatican City to mourn his death. So, and world leaders often attend this event. So we know that there's going to be world leaders at Pope Francis's event. As of January 22, there are 252 cardinals, of whom 138 are electors, according to the Vatican. Throughout the conclave, the cardinals are under oath of complete silence and forbidden contact with the outside world. In fact, so much so that they'll put jamming devices around the Vatican so that people cannot even make a phone call out to the outside world. They'll stay in there till there's a new pope elected. That can take up to several days. Pope Francis was elected, though, within 24 hours. I think the longest one was almost 3 years.
Wow.
But in modern times, it's been going on a lot faster. The longest conclave in the 20th century lasted 5 days. So that's once they start this event, we'll probably know within a week. Not since the 14th century, however, has anyone outside the rank of cardinal ever been elected pope. So we know from looking at who the cardinals are, we can narrow it down the possibilities. If no candidate receives at least 2/3 of the electors' votes, cardinals burn the slips of paper with chemicals, mystery chemicals, to produce black smoke. And then once a candidate earns the proper number of votes and accepts the papacy, they burn papers with white smoke. A lot of people ask, can we watch this papal election? And the simple answer is no, you can't. It's top secret. It's mystery. So when they begin this event, there'll be a special mass to begin the election of the papacy, after which 120 of the cardinals, the maximum number of cardinal electors, will gather inside the Sistine Chapel, which has overseen all papal conclaves since 1858.
Now we're going to be getting to some specifics on some of the candidates or the leading candidate and some very interesting things that would totally tie into Bible prophecy. But keep on going, Craig.
So there's several candidates for the papacy, and the leading candidate that has been prepped for this event is Pietro Parolin of Italy. And I'll probably get to that later, but some more details.
Right. Okay. And I know you're going to get to more information about him, and I will too. But it's interesting that he was the cardinal that went to King Charles' coronation instead of Pope Francis.
And he also does most of the speeches at the UN instead of Pope Francis, because Pope Francis was ill. So he's pushing the global UN Agenda 2030 more so, perhaps, on the front lines than Pope Francis. So it's believed that Pietro Parolin is expected to become the next pope. That's highly expected. But there's some other candidates too, so I'm going to mention a few of them. There's 3. So according to Reuters, there's 3 Peters that are in line to possibly be the next pope. Let's start with Peter Parolin. Parolin is among Vatican's most experienced officials and also carries considerable diplomatic experience worldwide, having been a part of negotiations with China and countries in the Middle East and the UN Agenda 2030. We have Cardinal Luis Antonio of the Philippines, but he's not viewed as a unifying candidate within the Vatican. And we have Cardinal Peter Erdo of Hungary. Then we have a Cardinal of Ukraine, and he's another potential choice. And so there's a few, but there's three Peters that are in line to potentially be the next pope.
Right, and then you mentioned, yeah, the Cardinal Peter Turkson and from Ghana. But what I've read that someone said to me, "Oh, isn't he conservative?" But what I've read is he's very liberal. But anyway, but can you give? There's more information about Cardinal Pietro Parolin. I can you talk about that now?
Yeah. So we know that Vance just met with him on April 19th, and a Vatican statement said areas of agreement such as defense of religious freedom as well as areas of tension with the Trump administration were discussed. And so they're pushing for the universal church, so merging all religions together. And so Trump is doing this as well as the Vatican. And you see that with also King Charles with his Easter letter he produced right before Easter, where he talked of Islam and Judaism in regards to Easter. So they're trying to bring all the religions together.
Okay, now when you say, of course, some people are going to go, wait, okay, President Trump, how is he pushing for it? But of course, we know like his faith.
The
Um,
faith movement. And also, he to clarify, Donald Trump also had an event at the White House for the Muslims, and members of the faith movement were there.
oh, how recent was that?
That was the last part of Ramadan.
Okay.
There was also an exchange of opinions on the international situation regarding countries affected by war and political tensions and difficult humanitarian situations. So there was a discussion there with Pietro. And while other issues of mutual interest were discussed, the Vatican said that hope was expressed for collaboration between the state and the Catholic Church in the United States. And so they're pushing for more collaboration in the days ahead. So I want to make this clear that if you read Revelation 18, it states that all the kings of the earth deal with this religious Babylonian system, which we see only in Rome today. All the nations deal with Rome. Not all the nations deal with the United States. Not all the nations deal with London, but everybody, all presidents, all kings deal with the Vatican. Pietro, before his tenure as Secretary of State, worked in diplomatic service for the Holy See for 30 years. In September 2007, at the opening of the UN, Parolin argued, "We often hear in the halls of the United Nations of the responsibility to protect. The Holy See believes that applies also in the context of climate change. States have a shared responsibility to protect the world's climate through mitigation, adaptation, and above all, a shared responsibility to protect our planet and to ensure the present and future generations be able to live in a healthy and safe environment." On August 31st, 2013, Pope Francis appointed Parolin Secretary of State. When asked if he would be spearheading a new diplomatic offensive for peace, he noted that was a complicated question, but said, "Yes, I hope that we can recoup that drive. We have this great advantage in respect to other churches, to other religions. We can count on our international institutional presence through diplomacy." So this is how they plan to originate or arrive at peace is through diplomacy. Parolin's also been called Papal, a candidate to succeed Francis as Pope. So this is widely believed in the Catholic Church. Pope Francis raised him to the rank of Cardinal Bishop effective June of 2018. He also participated in COP28 on November 6th to the 7th in November 2023 and read the Pope's climate change statement at COP28 on his behalf as the Pope was unable to attend. On the 2024 Gaza war, he stated that Israel had the right to self-defense, but this must be proportional. And with the 30,000 dead, it certainly isn't. The Israeli embassy to the Holy See called his remarks a deplorable declaration. So we're also going to see him pushing for a Palestinian state, no matter whether he's the Pope or not.
Absolutely, because like let's say he doesn't become the Pope, all eyes still need to be looking at Cardinal Pietro Parolin because there's a lot more information that I'm going to bring out too. But keep on going.
So he also has spoken on artificial intelligence and says one of the challenges posed by current events is undoubtedly the development of digital IDs or technologies based on artificial intelligence, the rapid spread of which is penetrating everyday life and influencing individual habits and social behavior. Its impact on the globalization of the economy, labor markets, political policies, and cultural expressions is becoming increasingly clear, so much so that we are facing not just an era of change, but a true paradigm shift. He goes on to say, understanding the transformations that are already taking place before our eyes as a result of the rapid development, it's a necessary act if we want to manage the AI revolution. That's the Roman Catholic Church wants to manage the AI revolution in a socially just and ecological sustainable way. We see that in prophecy where the Roman Catholic Church, the false prophet, would enforce the mark of the beast. And so they're managing the AI revolution. He goes on to say through advanced analysis and detection techniques, AI systems can identify malicious activity, adapt to it, and in real time provide proactive defense tools. So they're calling it's control.
I just wanted to thank the members. Your monthly support has helped the channel so much. And those of you who have given gifts, it's very much appreciated. And thank you for those who have subscribed. It really, really helps the channel. And stay tuned because Craig is going to uncover how prophecy has accelerated since the Pope has passed away. And he'll also discuss the Malachi prophecy. So it's interesting that I didn't know that about this cardinal, talking about AI, but, on previous interviews that I've done with you, you talked about with Pope Francis and the Vatican. And I just remember the 2025 Rome Call document, which you talked about. And that was with the Cisco CEO, Chuck Robbins, had met privately with Pope Francis. And it was the whole thing of Cisco and Microsoft and IBM signing onto a Vatican sponsored pledge regarding AI. So it's like you're like the Vatican and AI, and then you're talking about this, and they're still pushing it.
So whoever they get for Pope is going to push this global agenda. It's and if they don't, they're going to get pushed out. And then the next Pope would be the false prophet. So there's a high likelihood that the Pope they elect now will be the false prophet, but we don't know that for sure. So we have to watch and see how it plays out. But Parolin goes on to say between the apocalyptic scenarios that imagine the futures and the salvific conceptions that see technology as a solution to every problem, there is the middle ground using AI to improve the conditions of humanity, providing that it is subject to an appropriate form of control at the cultural, social, and political levels. It's the church that wants to control this and manage the AI in the days ahead.
And, President Trump is, of course, very strong on AI. Now, but I just want to mention one thing about J.D. Vance, since he had just recently met with Cardinal Pietro Parolin, which you discussed. But was interesting to me. J.D. Vance was baptized into the Catholic Church in 2019. So it was just recently, and he's the highest ranking Catholic in the United States government.
So the Vatican is involved in negotiations with all states for peace and unity with practical global politics in mind. The popes are elected to push a global agenda, which I've just stated, behind the scenes. And the behind the scenes global agenda is globalization via Agenda 2030 and the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The church, however, is pushing Laudato Si and Laudato Deum, and that is the seven goals for 7 years, and that ends in 2028. But at the same time, they're also pushing for the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
So basically, either way, with the Laudato Si and then with the Sustainable Development Goals, basically they are just pushing the whole climate agenda.
Yeah, and basically the Roman Catholic Church is becoming the movers and shakers of the UN climate agenda. And with that, they are aligning themselves with the UN completely. and bringing unity to the universal church through all these multiple denominations and religious organizations. So it's across all boards of religions. Almost all denominations are involved in this, major denominations. So Parolin, he wants to ensure the UN Sustainable Agenda has a human face defining the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. So we have to wonder as Christians who that human face is going to be. Is it going to be the false prophet, or is he referring to the king that is in control, or both? And historically, it's been both a king and a pope through the Holy Roman Empire. And then he said in a speech recently, I want millions to see. And we have to wonder what that millions is. And there's an answer for that. And it's the Roman Catholic Church has a sweeping global audience, and they want to awaken the world to a new reality. And that's via what we're talking about, Agenda 2030. So by 2030, it's a reset. Parolin's recognized as having a very good intellect. He's very smart. He knows several languages. He can speak English, unlike the previous pope. He has deep faith in the Roman Catholic system. And over the years, he has risen to the leading contender for the next pope. He's also involved in fostering peace throughout the world. And we know that most popes must fulfill that role to foster peace.
All right, so there's stuff that Craig already uncovered, but I just want to say this again. Discuss some of these things. When Cardinal Pietro Parolin had talked about "I want millions to see," and Craig was talking about that. Well, he spoke at COP29 in 2024, and he was calling for prosperous nations to stop overusing natural resources at the expense of the poorer nations. In other words, he was saying when the poorer nations were having disasters, that it was because we are just overusing the natural resources and it's our fault and we need to feel guilty for it. But that was just like Pope Francis. He basically said the same kind of stuff. We need to feel guilty for prospering. And basically then they want to put everything, leveling everything out, and it's basically communism.
Asking the more affluent nations that they may acknowledge the gravity of so many of their past decisions, which affects on the environment and the disproportionate use of natural resources by certain countries over long periods of time. Therefore, it is essential to seek a new international financial architecture that is human-centered, bold, creative, and based on the principles of equity, justice, and solidarity.
And then Craig, talked about this too, but I'm going to name some of the nations. He carries a lot of experience in international relations, having been even in negotiations with China, Middle East, Nigeria, Mexico, Venezuela, Vietnam, Cuba, and he's been involved in international treaties. And he now the news portrays him as a peacemaker and involved in global peace campaign. He calls for prayer for justice, peace, and the well-being of others. But again, that means everybody is equal as far as, the poorer nation. We have to just give up a lot of stuff. And of course, he's very pro-immigration. So that's with that. Now, Craig, do you want to mention anything as far as King Charles met with the Pope Francis, 12 days before he passed away?
12 days before they passed away, and they wished each other well because they're both sick.
Okay, now regarding sick, okay, so, Craig, people are going to go, well, since King Charles is sick, there's no way he'll become the Antichrist.
Just because someone's sick doesn't mean they're on their deathbed. So we also have this prophecy of the popes, and I don't put any faith into these extra biblical prophecies, but it's reported by the New York Times, and they have the image.
Is that the prophecy of Malachi or Malachi?
Yeah, Malachi, and it has this picture of the last pope with a black eagle on his head and a black horse sitting up on his lap. And so it's very interesting imagery there. And so it's prophesied by 2027 or in 2027 that the last pope will be Peter the Roman. And I find it, even though I don't believe these prophecies to be true per se, but it is interesting. We have 3 Peters as possibly being the next pope. So I would just say watch and don't put all your cards on an extra biblical prophecy. But
Right. But it's interesting because this was like, I mean, what period of time did he prophesy this? Do you know?
it's a 900-year-old manuscript. So it's been around for 900 years. And the question is, for everyone, is this the end of the world as we know it? And is this the time of the end? And so the Catholics also believe that the time of the end is here. Muslims also believe the time of the end is near. And also the Christians who are watching know the time of the end is near. So, but Satan also knows the time is near. So you can have other religions, of course, that believe that the time is near to the end. Beyond the Pope pick, the eeriest prediction pulled from the prophecy document claims that Judgment Day, the second coming of Christ, when all people living and dead will earn their eternal fate, is quite near. So that's in the prophecy. And it ends with Peter the Roman in 2027. So I don't agree with that prophecy anyways because of the year per se. But according to this final entry surrounded Peter the Roman, the last pope will preside over the church during a time of great turmoil, culminating in the destruction of Rome and the end of the papacy. And we see the destruction of Rome in Revelation 18 because all the nations of the earth fornicated with her. And so the papacy is involved with all matters of peace worldwide. So we're going to see them at the UN meetings every September, and we're going to see them at the UN COP meetings and anything else pertaining to UN. The Vatican is always present in some way, shape, or form. So I find that very, very interesting that a lot of people may be pushing for Pietro because of this prophecy.
Well, he's definitely one to watch if he doesn't become the Pope, but I would be pretty shocked if he's not.
And if he's not, it's still possible that he could be later on. Because if the next pope doesn't push the proper agenda, they'll just push him out. But all popes, it's obviously all popes since the 1960s are pushing this globalization agenda, and this guy pushes it more than anybody. So we'll see what happens.
So again, Cardinal Pietro Parolin was basically Pope. He was Pope Francis's right-hand man. And there's something I just want to bring up, and this was from past interviews that I did with Craig and information that Craig had said. But 2015, Pope Francis had that 10 environmental commandments to protect the planet. So this is something that Parolin would keep on pushing too. And I don't know if you all remember, but November 9th, 2023, Pope Francis asked thousands of children to chant, "Nature is our future." Remember that, Craig?
Yeah.
So they definitely talk about wanting to educate everyone on basically on what you should be allowed to do and not do so you don't destroy the planet.
Yeah. And he portrays himself as a peacemaker and is very pro immigration in allowing the other people enter your own country. So they want immigration through, you can live wherever you please, basically the idea. And that always leads to problems. We see that today too.
Okay, so there's a lot to watch for. So Craig, how can people find you?
I'm on Facebook, Craig Bong, or Rapture Watchers, all caps, by Craig Bong.
Yeah, and he's got great information on his Facebook pages on information all the time. So he does a lot of research. Okay, thanks so much, Craig. Warning to all Christians, the shocking truth has been revealed. Click on this video and find out why.